are standing in the middle of a world erased by white. The silence is the first thing you notice. A heavy, suffocating blanket that presses down from the sky and rises from the earth. It is a silence unique to a heavy snowfall, where every sound is swallowed whole the moment it is born. Here, on Bozeman Pass in Montana, the wind is the only thing that speaks, howling through the skeletal pines like a predator made of pure ice. Every surface is coated in a thick layer of frost, glistening under a moon hidden by the storm. The air itself feels sharp, a million tiny needles against your skin, and it carries the clean, sterile scent of deep winter. In this vast, indifferent emptiness, you feel utterly and completely alone, a forgotten ghost in a frozen kingdom. But something is wrong with this pristine landscape. There, in the middle of the desolate expanse, a small mound of snow seems to be breathing. You watch, captivated, as it rises and falls in a slow, agonizing rhythm. With each exhale, a fragile cloud of vapor escapes, a fleeting proof of life, instantly torn apart by the wind. This is not just a drift sculpted by the storm. It is something alive, something fighting to exist against impossible odds. The creature beneath is entombed in a crust of ice and frost, trembling with a violence that goes far beyond the mere cold. It is a shudder, born from a deep, primal effort, a desperate battle, waged in silence. Beneath this living shield, you can just barely make out a sound, a faint, high-pitched whining that is almost lost in the gale, the sound of newborn life on the very edge of existence. The storm is a relentless antagonist, a living entity of cold and fury. It doesn't just surround this scene, it attacks it. You can almost feel the weight of each new snowflake as it lands, one more grain of sand in an hourglass that is rapidly running out. The wind whips with a personal vengeance, tearing at the father's fur, trying to steal the precious dwindling warmth he is generating. The temperature continues its merciless descent, plunging into numbers that are incompatible with life. The night deepens, not into a gentle darkness but into a black, oppressive void, where the swirling snow is the only thing visible. Every gust of wind feels like a blow, every passing minute a victory for the encroaching ice. You are witnessing a siege, and the fortress is made of nothing but flesh, bone, and a will that is beginning to fray. Beneath the shivering body of their protector, 6 tiny lives are nestled together, blind to the war being waged for their survival. Their world is a small pocket of relative warmth, a universe defined by the smell of their father and the faint, rhythmic thud of his struggling heart. They are driven by pure instinct, squirming against one another, their soft, helpless cries a stark contrast to the storm's roar. They know nothing of the biting cold just inches away, nothing of the sacrifice that is turning their father into a statue of ice. Their trust is absolute, their vulnerability total. They are perfect, fragile beings at the very beginning of their journey, completely unaware that their first moments on Earth might also be their last, their fate resting entirely on a shield of love that is slowly freezing solid. You look around, searching the impenetrable curtain of white for any sign of hope, but there is none. The highway that cuts through this pass is a ghost road, likely impassable, its yellow lines buried under feet of fresh powder. This is a bubble of complete isolation, a pocket of the world forgotten by everything but the winter. There are no distant headlights, no rumble of a passing engine, no comforting glow of a faraway house. The only sounds are the groaning of pine branches, sagging under the immense weight of the snow and the ever-present shriek of the wind. This profound loneliness is a physical presence, a cold hand that grips your chest. It is the chilling realization that in this moment, on this forgotten stretch of mountain, help is not coming. They are entirely, terrifyingly, on their own. You focus back on the mound of snow, and you see the change. The slow, rhythmic breathing has become shallower, more labored. A violent shudder racks the father's body, a deep tremor that seems to shake him to his very core. And then it subsides into a frightening stillness. The cloud of vapor that marks his breath is now thinner, a barely perceptible wisp against the crushing cold. His mission to protect his young is costing him everything, draining the last reserves of his strength. The faint whining from beneath him has also grown weaker, the desperate pleas becoming sporadic and faint. You are watching life being extinguished in slow motion, a flame guttering in the face of an unstoppable force. Will anyone find this monument of love before it becomes a frozen tomb? You now see him for who he is, not just a mound of snow, but a being with a history etched into his weary posture. He is Kaiser, a name that speaks of nobility and strength, a name that feels like a cruel joke in this desolate wasteland. His German Shepherd lineage is unmistakable in the proud arch of his neck and the intelligent shape of his head, now bowed against the relentless assault of the storm. His thick coat, once a magnificent tapestry of black and tan, is now a stiff, crystalline shell of ice, each hair a tiny dagger of frost. You can see the exhaustion in his amber eyes, a deep, soul-crushing weariness that goes beyond mere physical fatigue. He is a king who has lost his kingdom, a guardian left with nothing to protect but the faint, fragile heartbeats stirring beneath him, a final, desperate stand against a world that has already forgotten him. His virtue is not a choice. It is the very core of his existence, a flame that refuses to be extinguished by the suffocating cold. This is more than instinct. It is a profound and unbreakable paternal love, a loyalty so deeply ingrained in his DNA that it compels him to transform his own body into a living shield. You watch as a violent shiver racks his frame, and you understand it is not a sign of weakness, but a desperate, conscious effort to stoke the furnace of his metabolism, to generate one more calorie of warmth for the 6 tiny lives huddled in the sanctuary he has created. He is stealing seconds back from death, paying for them with his own dwindling life force. Every breath he takes is a defiance. Every moment he remains upright, a testament to a love that is stronger than the storm itself. What's at stake is everything. Beneath his weakening body lies the reason for his impossible endurance. 6 perfect, helpless puppies, blind to the war being waged just inches above them. Their entire universe is the dark, warm pocket of air trapped by their father's body, a world defined by the comforting smell of his fur and the low, rhythmic thunder of his struggling heart. They squirm and nuzzle, driven by the pure, uncomplicated need for warmth and sustenance, completely unaware that their protector is slowly turning to ice. Their trust is absolute, their vulnerability a crushing weight on his failing shoulders. You are witnessing the most sacred of bonds, a father sacrificing himself for children who do not yet know his face, fighting for a future they may never get to see. You can almost feel the ghost of what he has lost, a faint echo of a different life that haunts the frozen air around him. Perhaps there was once a warm hearth, the sound of a familiar voice calling his name, the gentle touch of a hand that promised safety and belonging. Those memories are now just wisps of smoke, dissolving into the white void. He was abandoned, a loyal soldier left behind on a forgotten battlefield, yet his loyalty did not die. It was simply repurposed, transferred from a master who forsook him to the innocent lives he brought into this unforgiving world. This knowledge makes his sacrifice all the more poignant. He is giving a love he was ultimately denied, offering a protection that was not offered to him, a silent, noble act of defiance against his own cruel fate. His body has become a fortress, but the siege is taking its toll from within. The cold is a relentless enemy, seeping through his iced-over fur, sinking its teeth deep into his muscles and bone. A sharp, gnawing hunger hollows out his insides, a constant, dull ache that competes with the searing pain in his frost-bitten paws. Yet he remains perfectly still, a statue of paternal devotion, because he knows that any significant movement could break the delicate seal of his body against the snow, letting in a fatal draft of wind. He endures the agony in silence, channeling all his remaining energy into a single, all-consuming purpose. You are not just watching an animal survive, You are witnessing a conscious act of martyrdom, a father turning his own suffering into a wall to shield his young from the harshness of the world. The change is subtle at first, then terrifyingly clear. The powerful shutters that were generating so much heat have become weaker, more sporadic, replaced by a frightening stillness. His breathing, once a steady rhythm against the storm's chaos, is now shallow and labored, each exhale a smaller, more fragile cloud of vapor. He is losing. The fire within him is dwindling to embers, and the encroaching ice is finally beginning to win the war. He lowers his majestic head, his muzzle sinking into the snow, the amber light in his eyes starting to dim. You realize with a cold knot in your stomach that you are watching his final chapter unfold. This guardian, this king without a kingdom, has given almost everything he has. How much longer can his love possibly hold back the night? Then it happens. A sound so alien to this silent, white world that it feels like a physical violation, a tearing of the very fabric of the night. It starts as a low rumble, a vibration you feel in your bones before you hear it, a deep growl that is not of nature. The sound grows, becoming a deafening roar that shatters the cathedral of silence, a monster of steel and diesel climbing the pass. Two beams of light, sharp as knives, slice through the swirling curtain of snow, pinning Kaiser in their unforgiving glare. They sweep across his ice-caked form, momentarily illuminating the desperate tremor of his body. This is not rescue, it is an invasion. The mechanical thunder of the semi-truck's engine is a brutal counterpoint to the organic, struggling heartbeat beneath the snow, a force of the modern world about to collide with a primal, timeless struggle. Behind the wheel, a man named Mike Sullivan grips the wheel, his knuckles white. His face, etched with the lines of 1,000 lonely highways, is illuminated by the green glow of the dashboard. He is a creature of the road, a modern nomad whose only companions are the hum of the engine and the endless ribbon of asphalt. His first instinct is to push on, to dismiss the shape on the side of the road as just another anonymous snowdrift, a common sight in these treacherous mountain passes. But something holds him back, a flicker of movement caught at the edge of his vision, a detail that doesn't fit the landscape's cold geometry. It's a gut feeling, an instinct honed by years of watching the world fly by, a quiet whisper in his soul that tells him to stop. He could ignore it. But tonight, the whisper is a shout. With a loud hiss of air brakes that seems to make the very pines flinch, the colossal machine shudders to a halt. The sudden silence that follows is even more profound than before, broken only by the idling engine's low thrum and the relentless howl of the wind. Mike pushes the heavy door open, and the cold hits him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and stinging his exposed skin. He pulls his collar tighter, his boots sinking deep into the fresh powder with a muffled crunch. And then he sees it clearly, the trembling mound, the faint, ghostly puff of vapor escaping with each labored breath. It is a frozen miracle, a testament to life's stubborn refusal to surrender, and the sight roots him to the spot. He is no longer just a driver passing through, he is now a witness. You watch as two worlds, separated by an impassable gulf of experience, are now just yards apart. Mike, a man defined by motion, engine noise, and the artificial warmth of his cab, stands before Kaiser, a being defined by stillness, sacrifice, and the raw, unyielding cold of the natural world. He takes a hesitant step forward, the sound of his boot on the snow unnaturally loud, a signal of his intrusion. In response, a deep, guttural growl rumbles from within the mound of ice and fur. It's a sound of pure, primal warning, not of aggression, but of a father's desperate fear. It is the sound of a king defending the last square inch of his broken kingdom, a clear and unmistakable message. Do not come any closer. The line has been drawn in the snow. Mike freezes, his hand half raised, understanding the language of that warning perfectly. He can see the faint glint of amber eyes beneath the frost, burning with a protective fire that the storm has not been able to extinguish. He is an unknown, a potential threat in a world that has already proven itself to be hostile and unforgiving. The warmth of his truck calls to him, a safe harbor just a few steps away. He could retreat, climb back into his metal shell, and drive away into the night, leaving this frozen tableau to its fate. He could erase the image from his mind, bury it under miles of highway, and tell himself he saw nothing. It would be the easy thing to do, the logical choice, in a place where survival is a solitary affair. But does he? The choice hangs in the frozen air, a moment stretched to its breaking point. You see the conflict play out on Mike's face, a battle between the solitude he knows and the sudden unexpected pull of responsibility for a life that is not his own. He looks from the shivering, growling guardian back to the warm, inviting glow of his cabin, a world of safety and indifference. But then, in a move that seals his fate and theirs, he slowly lowers his hand and takes another deliberate step forward. He is choosing to enter their story, to cross the line that has been drawn. The growl deepens, vibrating with a desperate promise of a fight to the death, and you are left wondering if this act of compassion is about to be repaid with violence. The storm is the first true enemy, an antagonist made of nothing but wind and ice. You feel its relentless assault, as if it were a physical being, a monstrous entity determined to scrub this small pocket of life from the face of the mountain. Each gust of wind is a calculated blow, ripping at Kaiser's fur, trying to steal the precious, dwindling warmth he manufactures with his own life force. The snow is no longer a gentle blanket. It is a shroud, each flake another grain of sand in an hourglass that is rapidly running out. The cold deepens, seeping into the very air, making it brittle and sharp. This is not just a storm. It is a siege, and the walls of the fortress are made of flesh and bone, a fortress that is beginning to crumble under the sheer indifferent weight of nature's fury. As Mike takes another cautious step forward, a second wall rises to meet him, one made not of ice but of desperate paternal love. A growl, low and guttural, rumbles from deep within Kaiser's chest, a sound that vibrates through the frozen ground. It is not a sound of aggression, but of pure, undiluted fear. You can see the muscles in his back tense beneath the casing of frost, a coiled spring of exhausted energy, ready to be unleashed in a final, suicidal defense. His amber eyes, barely visible, burn with a primal fire, a clear and unmistakable warning. He is a king defending the last square inch of his broken kingdom, and Mike is an invader. The air crackles with a tension colder than the storm itself, a standoff between compassion and instinct. Mike understands. He slowly backs away, a retreat that feels like a defeat. But then you see the gears of empathy turning behind his tired eyes. He returns to the warm sanctuary of his truck, the engine, a low thrumming heartbeat in the chaos. He emerges moments later, not with a tool of force, but with a fragile offering. He holds a piece of his own half-eaten sandwich, the scent of processed meat and bread, a bizarrely human intrusion into this primal scene. He places it carefully on the snow, a safe distance from the frozen guardian, along with his own thick work jacket. He backs away again, a silent gesture of peace. You watch, holding your breath, as the deep growl falters, replaced by a tense, watchful silence. A tiny crack has just appeared in the wall of distrust. Buoyed by this small victory, Mike turns to the tool of the modern age. You see the faint blue light of his cell phone screen illuminate his face, a small beacon of hope against the oppressive darkness. His fingers, numb and clumsy with cold, swipe across the glass, searching for the bars of connection that link this desolate place to the world below. But the screen delivers a verdict as cold and final as the storm itself. No service. The words glow with a cruel irony. In an age of instant communication, he is completely and utterly cut off. The storm has created a bubble of perfect isolation, a dead zone where cries for help dissolve into the howling wind. The brief flicker of hope is nearly extinguished by the crushing realization that they are truly, terrifyingly alone. Your gaze is pulled back to the fragile life huddled beneath the frozen guardian. The chorus of faint, high-pitched whines has changed. One voice is missing. A terrible stillness has fallen over a small part of the writhing mound of fur. Kaiser feels it instantly. He lowers his head, nudging the motionless body with his snow-caked muzzle, his movements becoming frantic. He licks the tiny, cold form, a desperate attempt to spark life back into it, a silent, panicked plea that goes unanswered. You feel a cold dread creep into your heart. The abstract threat of the storm has just become terrifyingly real. Death has made its first move, and the time for waiting, for caution, has just run out. Every second now is a life slipping away. Risking everything, Mike makes his final move. He doesn't walk, he collapses. You watch him sink to his knees in the deep, unforgiving snow, a profound act of surrender. He pulls off his thick gloves, exposing his bare, reddening hands to the brutal air, a gesture of absolute vulnerability. He doesn't speak in commands or reassurances. He speaks in a low, broken whisper, his voice cracking with the cold and raw emotion. He speaks not as a man to a dog, but as one father to another, a universal language of shared desperation. Kaiser slowly lifts his majestic, ice-laden head. The growl is gone. His amber eyes meet Mike's, and in their exhausted, soul-deep weariness, you see the wall of distrust finally crumble into dust, replaced by a silent, heartbreaking plea for help. Defeated by the cold, glowing letters on the screen, you feel the hope in your chest collapse. The words "no service" are a final verdict, a digital tombstone in a world of white. Mike lowers the phone, his face a mask of weary resignation, the small beacon of modern connection extinguished, leaving only the oppressive darkness of the storm. His gaze falls on Kaiser, then on the still, silent form of the puppy that has already succumbed. He is trapped, a witness to a slow tragedy with no way to call for help. But then, his eyes drift to a forgotten corner of his dashboard. It is an old CB radio, a relic from a bygone era of highways and lonely voices. Its coiled black cord is covered in a thin layer of dust, a ghost of communication. In this place where the future has failed, perhaps the past holds an answer. With a hand that trembles from more than just the biting cold, Mike reaches for the microphone. He clicks the button, and the cab fills with a sound that is both ancient and alive. The electric hiss of static, the sound of the empty spaces between worlds. He lifts it to his lips, his own breath creating a small cloud of fog in the frigid air. You hear his throat click as he swallows, gathering the last of his resolve. His voice, when it finally comes, is not the steady, road-worn baritone of a seasoned trucker. It is cracked, raw, and full of a desperate humanity that cuts through the static. He speaks his call sign, Lone Wolf, and the name hangs in the air, a perfect, painful summary of his entire life until this very moment. He doesn't just report an incident. He tells a story of a hero, a father, a king freezing to death to save his children. For a long, heart-stopping moment, the only reply is the indifferent crackle of the radio, a sound that mimics the relentless whisper of the falling snow. The silence stretches, thick and suffocating, and you can see the last flicker of hope dying in Mike's eyes. He is about to release the button, to surrender to the crushing isolation that has defined this night. He has cast his message into the void, a final prayer to a deaf and empty world. But then, through the static, a voice emerges. It is faint, distorted by distance and the storm, but it is undeniably real. A man's voice. Copy that, Lone Wolf. 2 simple words, yet they land with the force of a tidal wave, shattering the silence and the despair. 2 words that change everything. He is not alone. Someone is out there, listening in the dark. That single voice is the first crack in a dam. Suddenly, the frequency erupts. Another voice cuts through the static, closer this time. Then a third and a fourth. They are the other ghosts of the highway, the other solitary souls trapped in their steel cocoons by the blizzard, scattered for miles along the impassable pass. They had all been listening, each alone in their own bubble of silence, until one man's voice, filled with a desperate empathy, gave them a reason to speak. They don't ask for confirmation or question the plea. They respond with an immediate, unspoken understanding, a shared code of the road that runs deeper than any official protocol. Offers flood the airwaves, a chorus of anonymous saviors. I've got blankets, lone wolf. I have a medical kit. I'm a mile back, what do you need? You watch this unfold, and you understand. This is not a random act of kindness. It is a direct consequence of Mike's own virtue. The profound compassion that forced him to stop, that made him kneel in the snow and speak to Kaiser as an equal, was woven into the very fabric of his voice. He didn't just broadcast a request for help. He transmitted his own raw humanity across the airwaves, a signal so powerful it pierced the solitude of others. He broke the unwritten rule of the road, the rule of looking out for number one, and in doing so he created a new one. The brotherhood of the highway, so often just a romantic notion, has just materialized out of the storm, summoned by one man's refusal to let another father die alone in the cold. The cab of the truck, once a cold tomb of helplessness, is now a command center buzzing with a new and fragile energy. A plan, chaotic but beautiful, begins to take shape over the radio as voices coordinate their efforts, their words weaving a lifeline through the blizzard. Mike is no longer the lone wolf. He is the heart of a rescue mission, his voice guiding the scattered points of light that are now slowly, painstakingly making their way toward him. He looks through the windshield, through the swirling chaos, at the frozen guardian who remains completely unaware of the invisible army being marshaled on his behalf. A pair of headlights pierces the gloom far down the road, a promise inching closer. Help is on its way. But the storm howls with renewed fury, and time is a currency they are rapidly running out of. The headlights are the first sign, two brilliant spears of light that pierce the swirling chaos, carving a path through the blizzard. They belong to another truck, a brother of the road summoned from the void by a desperate plea. You watch as Mike, no longer a lone wolf but the reluctant general of an impromptu army, moves with a newfound purpose. He approaches Kaiser again, his steps sure and steady in the deep snow. In his hands he carries a thick, worn jacket, an offering from an anonymous savior miles down the pass. The air is no longer thick with distrust, but with a fragile, electric hope that crackles more fiercely than the static on the radio. Your own heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the storm's roar. Kaiser watches him, his body racked by a deep, uncontrollable tremor, but the warning growl is gone, replaced by an exhausted, waiting stillness. Mike moves with an agonizing, deliberate slowness, a man diffusing a bomb made of love and fear. He kneels, and you see his bare hands, red and raw from the brutal cold, gently reach toward the puppies nestled beneath their father. For a single, heart-stopping second, Kaiser's muscles bunch beneath his coat of ice, a primal instinct to protect flaring one last time. But he holds. He allows the intrusion. Mike's fingers close around the first tiny, squirming life, a creature so impossibly small it barely fills his calloused palm. He lifts it, a precious, fragile weight, and carefully wraps it in the warm, soft folds of the borrowed jacket. You feel the profound significance of this transfer, a life moving from the failing warmth of a father's body to the collective warmth of strangers. He makes the journey to his truck, a sacred pilgrimage through the snow. The cab of the great truck is transformed. It is no longer a cold, solitary capsule of a lonely man's life, but a makeshift nursery, a warm, humming sanctuary against the raging elemental fury outside. The single puppy is placed gently on the passenger seat, its tiny body, a writhing knot of renewed life within the thick jacket. The warm air from the vents washes over it, a gentle, artificial breath of salvation. You can almost smell the change in the atmosphere, the sterile, metallic tang of the cold, giving way to the faint, milky scent of newborn life. Mike works with a focused intensity you wouldn't have thought possible, his face a mask of fierce concentration, his every movement deliberate and infinitely careful. He is a man reborn on this forgotten pass, his purpose no longer defined by the endless miles of highway, but by these fragile, precious heartbeats. As Mike returns for the last living puppy, you see the true and terrible cost of Kaiser's long vigil. The great dog's body is shaking with a violence that seems to originate from the very center of the earth, a final, convulsive effort to maintain his post until his duty is done. His beautiful amber eyes are glazed over with a profound exhaustion, the protective fire within them reduced to a single, flickering ember. He watches Mike lift the last of his children, his majestic head held high with a final, heartbreaking sliver of his former pride. You feel a hard lump form in your throat as you witness this silent, sacred transfer of responsibility. The guardian has held the line, has paid the ultimate price, and is now passing the torch to an unlikely successor. The last puppy is safe, its faint whimper a tiny sound of victory against the storm's deafening roar. His mission is finally complete. The last of his children is secure in the warm, bright haven of the truck's cab. And then you watch it happen. The iron will that held Kaiser's body together, the paternal love that defied the very laws of physics and biology, simply snaps. The magnificent German shepherd, the silent king of this frozen wasteland, collapses. It is not a gentle slide into a well-earned rest. It is a sudden, complete surrender, as if the invisible strings holding his exhausted form upright have all been severed at once. His body hits the snow with a soft, final thud, and a puff of white powder rises around him like a departing spirit. His eyes, which had followed every single one of Mike's movements with unwavering focus, finally close. A profound, terrifying silence falls over the scene, a quiet so deep it seems to swallow the howl of the wind itself. Mike spins around at the sound, a strangled cry catching in his throat. He stumbles back through the deep, clinging snow, falling to his knees beside the still, silent form. He gathers Kaiser's massive, ice-laden head into his arms, pulling the guardian against his chest in a desperate embrace. And then you see it, the moment that shatters every notion you had of this rough, road-weary man. He begins to weep. Hot, thick tears stream down his face, freezing almost instantly on his skin, mingling with the relentless, falling snowflakes. He presses his cheek against the dog's ice-caked fur, whispering broken words of praise, of thanks, of apology into the wind. This is the image that will burn itself into your memory, a man, broken and redeemed, holding a fallen hero in his arms. The truck's engine rumbles nearby, no longer a monster, but an ark waiting to carry them toward a new dawn. But will Kaiser ever see it? The first thing you notice is the silence, but it is a different kind of quiet now. It is not the heavy, suffocating silence of the snow, but the gentle, rhythmic hum of a heater in a small, sterile room. The air no longer smells of ice and pine, but of antiseptic and clean blankets. You see Kaiser, not as a statue of frost, but as a living, breathing creature of flesh and fur, his body curled on a soft bed. Wires trail from his shaven leg to a monitor that beeps a steady, reassuring rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat that has replaced the frantic thunder you heard in the storm. And beside him, in a hard plastic chair, sits Mike. He hasn't left. He is no longer the lone wolf, a ghost on the highway, but an anchor, a quiet, unmoving guardian watching over another. The world has changed, from a white wasteland to this small, warm room, a sanctuary built not of steel, but of a promise made in the dark. The story, however, could not be contained within those four walls. It escaped, carried first on the crackling static of the CB radio, becoming a whispered legend among the brotherhood of the road, Then it leaped into the light. A shaky cell phone video, filmed by another trucker who arrived on the scene, captured the unforgettable image. Mike, his face raw with emotion, cradling the fallen king in the swirling snow. That image hit the internet like a lightning strike. It spread from a small trucking forum to local news pages, then to national feeds, a digital wildfire of shared humanity. He was no longer just a dog. He became a symbol, the guardian of Bozeman Pass. You watch as millions of people, safe and warm in their homes, bear witness to the miracle that you saw unfold alone in the heart of the blizzard. The world was now watching. That digital attention became a physical force. The small, underfunded county shelter that took in Kaiser and his pups was suddenly at the epicenter of a national event. The single phone line rang with a constancy that was overwhelming. Calls coming in from every state. Donations poured into their website, crashing the server multiple times. But it was the trucks that told the real story. One after another they pulled up, their air brakes hissing, driven by men with familiar, road-weary faces. They unloaded pallets of high-quality dog food, mountains of warm blankets, and medical supplies. They were delivering more than goods. They were delivering a message. The compassion that Mike had broadcast into the void had been answered, amplified, and returned 1,000 times over, a wave of warmth, powerful enough to melt the deepest winter snows. The 6 puppies, once shivering, helpless bundles on the edge of oblivion, were now the most famous orphans in the country. They were no longer just survivors. They were living proof of their father's impossible love, each one a tiny, perfect vessel for his story. The shelter was inundated with thousands of adoption applications, but the process became a kind of pilgrimage. Families drove for days, crossing state lines not just to adopt a pet, but to become a part of the legend. You see them, one by one, leaving the shelter with a small, wriggling carrier, their faces filled with a kind of reverent joy. They were not just taking home a puppy. They were taking home a spark from the fire of a hero, promising to carry his legacy of loyalty and love into the warmth of their own homes, spreading the light of that dark Montana night across the land. And in the center of it all, 2 souls were quietly healing. Kaiser was released from the vet clinic, not into a shelter kennel, but into the passenger seat of Mike's truck. You follow them home, to a small, unassuming house where the scent of coffee hangs in the air. Mike is no longer a man defined by motion and solitude. He moves with a new stillness, a new purpose. You see him sitting on the floor in front of a crackling fireplace, its contained warmth, a universe away from the storm's fury. Kaiser lies beside him, his great head resting on Mike's lap, his amber eyes watching the flames. They don't need words. They are 2 survivors, a man who had lost his way, and a dog who had lost everything else, who found their way back together, forging a new family in the crucible of that unforgettable night. The peace they have found feels earned, final, a quiet harbor after the storm of a lifetime. The snow falls gently outside the window, but here, inside, there is only warmth. Mike gently strokes Kaiser's head, a simple, profound gesture of belonging. Then you see it, lying on the small table next to his chair, an opened letter on official-looking letterhead. It is from a lawyer. Your eyes catch a few phrases: legal ownership, claim of property, return of the German Shepherd known as Kaiser. A cold dread, as chilling as the wind on the pass, seeps into the warm room. The man who abandoned Kaiser to die in the snow has seen the news. And now, he wants his famous dog back. The past has returned, not as a ghost, but as a predator, threatening to shatter this fragile new world. You feel the warmth of the fire seep into your bones, a stark contrast to the icy memory of the storm. In this quiet, unassuming house, a new world has been built, a sanctuary forged from the ashes of a blizzard. Mike sits on the floor, his hand resting gently on Kaiser's head, the rhythmic rise and fall of the dog's breathing, a quiet symphony of peace. The snow outside is now just a beautiful, silent decoration, its power to harm nullified by these 4 walls. But then your eyes fall upon the letter resting on the table. It is a single sheet of paper, but you feel its weight, a cold, heavy presence in the room. It is a ghost from a past that should be dead and buried, a legal chain reaching out from the darkness to reclaim the king who was left for dead. The silence is no longer peaceful. It is the held breath before a new storm breaks. The injustice of it all is a bitter pill, a cold knot that tightens in your chest. You think of the man who drove away, leaving this noble creature to be entombed in ice, a conscious decision to discard a life as if it were trash. Now, drawn by the glare of an unexpected spotlight, he has returned. Not with remorse, not with an apology, but with a claim. He does not see the hero who shielded his children from death. He sees a sudden celebrity, a valuable commodity to be exploited. You understand that this fight is not about love or loyalty, it is about ownership. The law, a tool meant to protect, now feels like a weapon poised to punish the virtuous and reward the cruel. You look at Kaiser, whose only crime was a devotion so powerful it nearly cost him everything, and you feel a surge of protective fury for this family that was so hard won. But you remember that Mike and Kaiser are not alone anymore. Their story escaped the confines of that lonely mountain pass, carried first on the crackling airwaves of a CB radio, and then on the lightning-fast currents of the internet. The Brotherhood of the Road, the anonymous community that answered the lone wolf's call, did not simply fade away with the morning sun. When the news of this legal battle breaks, that community reawakens, their collective voice a digital roar that shakes the foundations of the internet. The hashtag #StandWithKaiser is no longer just a trend, it is a movement, a global testament to justice. A legal fund appears online, and within hours, it is flooded with donations from thousands of strangers who refuse to let this story end with a betrayal. The world that watched a miracle unfold is now ready to fight for it. This conflict forces you to confront a question that lies at the very heart of what it means to be connected. What truly defines a family? Is it a legal document, a certificate of ownership filed away in a dusty cabinet? Or is it something forged in the fire of shared adversity, cemented by sacrifice and an unspoken promise to protect? You see the answer in the quiet trust between Mike and Kaiser. You saw it in the moment Mike knelt in the snow, offering his own vulnerability as a bridge across a chasm of fear. You see it now, in this home built not on a foundation of property, but on a foundation of mutual rescue. Family is not about who holds the leash. It is about who holds your life in their hands during the storm and refuses to let go. And so, the legend of the Guardian of Bozeman Pass transcends its own narrative, becoming a timeless parable for all of us. It is a stark reminder that we live in a world capable of both breathtaking cruelty and overwhelming compassion. The story shows you that even in the most desolate of landscapes, when you feel most isolated and forgotten, connection is still possible. One person, choosing to stop, choosing to care, can be the spark that ignites a fire of collective humanity, a warmth that can push back against the coldest night. Kaiser's ordeal and Mike's choice become a testament to the truth that our greatest strength is not found in our ability to endure hardship alone, but in our courage to answer another's call for help, becoming part of a story larger than our own. The final chapter of this story is not written in a courtroom, nor is it decided by a judge. It is written by you, right now, in the quiet of your own heart. You have been a witness to this entire journey, from the desperate fight for survival in a world of white to the fragile peace of a warm hearth. You have seen how a single act of compassion can ripple outwards, touching and transforming countless lives. The real message is not what happened on that mountain, but what you will do with the memory of it. Look around your own world. The storms are everywhere, and so are the guardians fighting to protect something precious. The invitation is to not simply be a spectator. Be the one who stops. Be the one who offers a blanket, a kind word, a signal through the static. Be the help that is on its way.